Because I'm creatively bankrupt, I'm hopping on the iceberg trend. A bunch of facts and theories are listed about something, starting off with fairly well known things and getting progressively more obscure the further we go down the iceberg. This is the Ratchet and Clank one, created by the amazingly named Reddit user Izzy Drizzle. I've removed a few entries that I felt weren't noteworthy, but added a few of my own in their place. Anyway, I've already broken my golden rule of no intros, it's cost me everything, so... Quark in a tutu. In any of the vidcomic minigames in Up Your Arsenal, you can change Quark's outfit to a tutu by entering up up, down down, left right, circle, square square. This is actually referenced in a cutscene where Al mentions it while playing. Dan Johnson references. Throughout the series, references can be found to Insomniac Games employee Dan Johnson, including his face being hidden in the environment, statues of him, and most frequently, him being an unlockable skin you can play as. And fun fact, these originally started as an inside joke, and evolved into being a tribute, because he died. What? Well, that's not a fun fact at all. The Lombaxes. One of the main plot points of the PS3 games is how Ratchet is the last of a species, the Lombaxes, as they're thought to be lost in another dimension. We have since seen 3 Lombaxes in this dimension, so that's bullshit. Insomniac Museum. In Going Commando, Up Your Arsehole, and A Crack in Time, there's a secret level you can unlock that features a ton of scrap content from the games, most of which you can actually interact with to varying degrees. This is my personal favourite Easter egg in gaming history, so huge credit to Insomniac developer Mike Stout for creating this, you nailed it man. It also appeared in the 2016 reboot, but we don't talk about that. A version of it also appears in the PSP spin-offs Size Matters and Secret Agent Clank, this time called the High Impact Games Treehouse, because these games were developed by High Impact Games rather than Insomniac. Unused vidcomics. In the Insomniac Museum of Up Your Asshole, you can play a few vidcomics that never made it into the final game, including a beta version of the first level and the first vidcomic they ever made. The latter was scrapped because many of its concepts didn't work well. PSP games. As I mentioned like 30 seconds ago, 2 entries were made for the PlayStation Portable, Size Matters and Secret Agent Clank. Size Matters was like the PS2 games, but worse. And Secret Agent Clank was actually a stealth game where you play as Clank, based on the fictional TV show of the same name from Up Your Arsenal. It was also a bit shit in my opinion. I seem to be in the minority though, because Size Matters is actually one of the highest selling games of the series, rivaled only by the 2016 reboot. First games are consumerism satire. As mentioned by every Ratchet & Clank YouTuber ever, the first game, Going Commando and Deadlocked all feature satire of consumerism, such as big corporations constantly trying to monetize everything and many characters refusing to cooperate with you until you pay them. These themes became less and less prominent as the series progressed, breaking the hearts of video essayists everywhere. Insomniac and Naughty Dog are friends. In the 2000s, fellow PlayStation developers Insomniac and Naughty Dog would constantly help each other. For example, assets were always shared between the two, such as this pain in the ass fish, and they gave each other code to improve one another's game engines. Infinite Bolts glitch. In the first game, you can glitch onto the racetrack in Blackwater City. At a certain point on the course, constantly using the Taunter weapon will give the player an unlimited amount of bolts. This is most useful in the PS3 and PS Vita versions of the game, as it makes the pain in the ass million bolts trophy much more manageable. I say this out of experience, fuck this trophy. Underscore MEGHAN underscore and YING underscore T. Fuck off. When you're at the vidcomic selection screen in Up Your Arsenal, pressing square will cause a code input screen to appear. If you put in the first code, you can play a 2D brawler called Pirate vs Ninja, a scrapped minigame featured in the Insomniac Museum. Similarly, the second code lets you play Bombs Away, an obvious Bomberman homage or ripoff depending on your worldview. Ratchet & Clank Clone Home. In the 2000s, a ton of games were made for flip phones. One such game was 2005's Ratchet & Clank Going Mobile, an excellent side-scroller that's widely considered one of the best on the platform. Because of this success, a sequel was in the works called Clone Home. We got a release date for it of September 1st, 2006, 6 screenshots, and even a synopsis. Ratchet & Clank apparently shrink themselves to fight, quote, imitators they do not find flattering. Despite the game game clearly being so deep into development, it was cancelled for unknown reasons. A few people online claim that it was released for a very brief period, but I've never seen a credible source actually back this up. Because of this, most people online believe it. Where is Angela Cross? In Going Commando, Ratchet meets a fellow Lombax called Angela Cross. In the PS3 games though, they wanted to do this storyline about how Ratchet is the last of his species. Do you see the problem here? As a consequence, they just kind of ignore her existence, leading to many wondering where the character is. The only acknowledgement of her is in one of the radio stations in A Crack in Time, where they note that she was on the run from the Lombax extermination, spearheaded by Tools of Destruction villain and General Tool, Emperor Tachyon. Galactic authorities have since found the ship, but not her, making her current whereabouts a mystery. Plumbers don't just go diving down strange pipes. In A Crack in Time, there's a cutscene where Clank, while standing inside his own subconscious, because sci-fi, talks to the plumber, who progresses the story by sending Clank into a nearby pipe. When Clank asks if he's coming with him, the plumber responds, "Plumbers don't go diving down strange pipes all willy-nilly, that'd be ridiculous," an obvious reference to the Super Mario series. Ratchet & Clank 3 double-ended lightsaber. In Up Your Arsenal, you can replace Ratchet's wrench with a double-ended lightsaber by pausing the game and entering right, down, up, down, left. You originally get this code by beating the Up Your Arsenal demo included in Sly 2 Band of Thieves, however I think most people just got it from GameFAQs. Jack playable in Deadlocked. In the split-screen co-op mode of Deadlocked, player 2 can play as Jack from the Jak and Daxter series. Given how dark Deadlocked is, I find it hilarious that they chose his really cute Precursor Legacy model rather than, you know, his gothic My Chemical Romance model from Jak 2. Very weird choice. This was returned in Jak X, where the Deadlocked version of Ratchet is a playable racer. Going Mobile's place in the timeline. As I touched on earlier, a Ratchet & Clank game was made for flip phones called Going Mobile. Because it isn't part of the main series or mentioned in any other game, many fans debate where this game's story takes place in the timeline, because that's how us Ratchet & Clank fans spend our spare time apparently. It's generally agreed upon that it takes place in between Up Your Arsenal and Deadlocked, because the cover art features armour and a weapon from Up Your Arsenal, the story revolves around the Secret Agent Clank TV series, a big part of Up Your Arsenal, and the game features posters of Ace Hardlight. Ratchet & Clank Before the Nexus. This was an endless runner released for smartphones to promote Into the Nexus. You would move between 3 lanes, occasionally go on grind rails, occasionally battle enemies, and in Raritanium that could be transferred to the main game. It's nothing groundbreaking, but I enjoyed it a lot. Unfortunately, it's since been removed from app stores, so playing it now is a little tricky. It also opened my breakout video ranking every Ratchet & Clank game. So yeah, it's a masterpiece. Growing boobs Easter egg. In the first game, side jumping left and right in front of the Blackwater City race host causes her boobs to get progressively bigger and bouncier. While most developers use the new PS2 hardware to create industry-defining experiences, Insomniac were out here programming this. I respect it. The Revolverator. This was a weapon in early versions of the first game that allowed Ratchet to spin enemies over his head. It was removed because it required too many resources to function, and to a lesser extent because it left Ratchet open to enemy attacks. Interestingly though, it did make it into the final game, albeit as a prop being held by an NPC. Hank. Hank is the pet dog of Insomniac employee Carl Grand, who was a mascot for the company at the time. The dog, not Carl. He has an entire room dedicated to him in the Insomniac Museum of Up Your Arsenal, including inspirational posters and a photoshopped artwork for Ratchet and Hank. Raritanium isn't rare. In universe, Raritanium is meant to be this elusive, obscure mineral that's worth loads. It's even straight up called Raritanium. The person who named this had very high hopes. In actual gameplay though, it's fairly easy to get in abundance. Only Lombaxes have 5 fingers. Most of the characters in the series have either less than 5 fingers or way more than 5 fingers, with only the Lombaxes seemingly possessing 5. However, Dan Johnson is also depicted with 5, so does that mean humans are Lombaxes? Because looking at the human race the past few years, we are definitely a species on the brink of extinction. Florana Racetrack. The Up Your Arsenal level Florana was originally going to have a racetrack, but it was cut due to time constraints. This was originally where the player would have run the refractor, and where Ratchet would have reunited with Skid McMarx. This would have been accessed through the area that in the final game is filled with crates. One track was completed for it and is playable in the Insomniac Museum, albeit in a fairly broken state. Furthermore, the introductory and victory cutscenes exist in an early build and can be found on YouTube. However, because they're unfinished, they're cursed as hell. Crate throwing enemy. On the optional path of Planet Dax in Up Your Arsenal, there was meant to be an enemy type that would throw crates and fellow enemies at Ratchet, but they were scrapped because pulling it off on the PS2 hardware was too difficult, and ultimately not worth it due to how little they would have appeared. You can see one in the Insomniac Museum. Mr. Fister. In the Insomniac Museum of Up Your Arsenal, you can find the unfinished model of a character called Mr. Fister. When you go near them, a message appears saying, "All hail Mr. Fister." And that's the only information Insomniac have ever given. It seems to be a running inside joke, as another game of theirs, Spyro 2 Ripto's Rage, features a cut enemy called Mr. Fistus. It is not recommended you Google this. Who stacks all the crates? Most normal people ask questions like, what is the meaning of life, or is there life after death? Ratchet & Clank fans though ask questions like, who stacks all the crates? Girl with a stick. Before the first Ratchet & Clank game, Insomniac were working on a game called Girl with a Stick. This was a prehistoric action-adventure game inspired by The Legend of Zelda and Tomb Raider that features a, you guessed it, female-gendered human accompanied by, what's a synonym for stick? Beanpole, yeah. The game was scrapped because it was shit. This is relevant to Ratchet & Clank because elements of this have parallels to the series. Instead of a lady with a twig, we have a cat with a wrench. Instead of exploring a fantasy world, we explore a sci-fi world. It's not much, but you can definitely see how one evolved into the other on a fundamental level, to the point it was straight up referenced in the 2016 reboot. Rivet is trans. When Rift Apart character Rivet was first revealed, many speculated that they're transgender, because it was established in Going Commando that female Lombaxes don't have tails, yet Rivet does. I assume this is because they're from a different universe where female Lombaxes do have tails, or that this is just another attempt from Insomniac at erasing Angela Cross from existence, but either way, this is just speculation, so it's entirely possible. Also, when Rivet was first revealed, a lot of people made porn of them. This isn't on the iceberg, I just wanted to ruin your day. Skid's use of the hacker. On Aquatos in Up Your Arsenal, we see Skid McMarx use the hacker gadget. I'm not quite sure why this is on the iceberg, but I assume it's because Skid is dense as fuck, so him being able to use such a complex gadget might be hard to believe for some people. Ratchet & Clank All for One 8-bit mini mayhem. Jesus. This was a web browser game made to promote All for One. It's a top-down shooter seemingly inspired by the My Blaster Runs Hot minigame in A Crack in Time. Clank Ratchet. This is a cursed ass skin that was cut from Deadlocked. I can understand why. The crotchetizer's intended purpose. Oh wow, so googling this ruined my day. So in a few games, they depict this gadget called the crotchetizer. It's always left vague what specifically it does, but if you look at the general motion it does, you can deduce that it's used to jack off someone. This was featured in a game for 3-year-olds. I actually found this comment on Reddit describing in graphic detail how it jacks off the person, but I want the slim chance of this video still being monetized to stay there, so for now, it will remain one of nature's mysteries. Finish the nefarious fight before the second phase. In Up Your Arsenal, the final boss battle usually has 2 phases. The first in this arena, and then once you get Nefarious to a certain amount of health, he'll flee to a different area for the second phase. However, if you empty his health bar fast enough, you can actually completely drain it in the first phase, before the second phase is initiated. The game recognises it as you killing him, thus allowing you to skip the second half of the fight. Ratchet & Clank Life of Pi. I don't think I can actually show anything from this, so I hope you enjoy the random footage future me picked for this section. Anyway, in February 2021, some obscure ass streaming service in Canada called Crave released a short film called Ratchet & Clank Life of Pi. This is an official production by PlayStation Studios, made by the same team that did the movie, featuring all the game voice actors and everything. The story features Ratchet and Clank seizing the Portalizer from Dr. Nefarious, a device that can access different dimensions. However, Captain Quark accidentally activates it, causing a connection to a universe of, talking pizza. Ratchet and Clank then have to defend their universe from the talking pizza. Beyond this unique plot, this short movie is perplexing due to its bizarre release. It only released in Canada, received no promotion, and is actually dated 2019 in the credits, leading many to wonder how and why this exists, and if it was even meant to release in the first place. Solana Galaxy's economic boom. In the first game, picking up a bolt is worth 1 bolt. However, when you return to the same galaxy and up your arsenal, the bolts are now worth way more. This is obviously because the increased value worked better as a currency system in Going Commando, but sci-fi fans need an in-universe explanation for everything, so an economic boom happened, apparently. Contradictory time travel in a cracking time. I would rather read that Reddit comment describing in graphic detail what the crotchetizer does than explain time travel plot holes. Fuck this. Luckily, the legendary Izzy Drizzle explained this for me, so thank you fam. So in short, the story of the future quadrilogy is that you want to save the Lombaxes that went missing years ago, but Clank says you can't do that with the Great Clock because you're not supposed to use it for time travel. But you can go back in time and save the Fongoids in the Battle of Gimlick Valley with a time portal. So, why can't you put a time portal on Fastoon, the planet of the Lombaxes, and save them that way? I also want to point out my 89-year-old grandmother watches my videos, so this has been the most confusing minute of her entire life. The plumber knows he's in a game. Throughout the series, you interact with a side character called the plumber, who always has lines referring to the series. Probably the most on-the-nose one is in the 2016 reboot, where he says, "See you in the next reboot." Harder hacker puzzles. During the development of Up Your Arsenal, developer Mike Stout kept wanting to make the hacker puzzles harder and harder, but wasn't allowed to because ultimately this is a kids game, so they wanted puzzles that were more accessible to the target audience. As a compromise, he made it such that if you activate a hacker puzzle while holding the R1 button, you'd be able to play the original harder version. Ratchet and Clank Race Through Time. This was a web browser game made to promote a crack in time. It's a 2D platformer where Clank has to get through the Great Clock as fast as possible, and you can get a bronze, silver or gold tier wallpaper based on what time you got. This was actually lost for a number of years due to its removal from Insomniac's website, but in 2021, Ratchet fans Super Smasher Jack and SGOC Represent were able to restore the files and make the game playable again, where it's now available on the game preservation program Flashpoint. Quark fucked a monkey. At the start of Up Your Arsenal, Captain Quark lives in the jungle, where he thinks he's a monkey. Later in the game, we overhear a conversation between him and Scrunch the monkey, where Quark says the line, "It was mating season, how was I supposed to know she was your sister?" Obviously implying that Quark fucked a monkey. Now, I know the implication is that Quark did this when he thought he was a monkey, but knowing Quark, he actually probably did this like a few days ago. Helga is non-binary. At one point in Up Your Arsenal, Quark addresses the team by saying, "Ladies and gentlemen, oh, and Helga," which Helga responds to with an appreciative smile, seemingly confirming that they're non-binary. Really cool and way ahead of his time. The virgin consumerism theme versus the Chad trans rights. The Fiddy. In Up Your Arsenal, there's a section where you have to escape from a ship under a time limit. In the speedrunning community, escaping it by the 50-second mark is referred to as the Fiddy. Al and Helga's relationship. In Up Your Arsenal, Al announces over the intercom of the Starship Phoenix that he has feelings for Helga. In cut dialogue from the game, he actually tells them this in person, where Helga reveals the feeling is mutual. That then leads to this audio, which is, wow, could have done without hearing this for my entire life.
Oh, Helga.
Ratchet and Clank Jungle Prototype. This was the first level ever made for Ratchet and Clank, mainly existing to show off what the PS2 was capable of compared to its predecessor. It would, very obviously, evolve into the level in the final game, Poketaru. Reader Digested. In the first game, getting all 30 skill points unlocks a collection of comedic magazine covers, chronicling what happens to the characters after the story. One of these is Reader Digested, an obvious parody of Reader's Digest, which reveals that news reporter Darla Gratch ended up falling in love with an amoeboid that ate her. There's also a joke about a Ratchet Clank movie, which has aged either really well or really poorly, depending on your worldview. The Adventures of Captain Starshield. Leading up to the release of Deadlocked, Insomniac released a 6-panel comic on their website called The Adventures of Captain Starshield, depicting his escapades 2 weeks before he joined Dreadzone, and fucking died. Interestingly, this comic features a species called the Kragmites, spelled here with a K, which are a completely different species to the Kragmites we see in Tools of Destruction 2 years later. Makes me wonder if there was any sort of inspiration there. Ratchet's eyebrows. In the Japanese version of the games, Ratchet has new, really thick eyebrows for some reason. This is actually a fairly common practice in Japan. For example, many Crash Bandicoot games have entirely different Crash models, making Crash bigger and more cutesy. Fire boots. This is a scrapped weapon from Going Commando. When quote unquote fired, a trail of fire is left wherever Ratchet walks that can hurt enemies, and creating a circle causes an explosion. It was cut because it was somehow even worse than the Clank Zapper. Actually no, I wouldn't go that far, but it was a bit shit though. What does YETI stand for? In a few games, most notably Going Commando, you fight a type of Yeti called YETI, which some people have apparently wondered what that stands for. I think you're just overthinking it, to be honest. While we're on the subject though, fuck this level. Dun 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 dun. No. Dun 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 dun. RatchetandClankGadgets.com. This was a website featuring tips and general information about the first game that is now mostly lost. What makes this site so notable though is two things. One, it hosted a competition where users could submit their own gadgets, which would be judged by actual employees of Insomniac. The winner received a framed picture of their gadget and some money. Even on the website, they were rocking that consumerism theme. And two, it was home to an exclusive Ratchet & Clank game, Challenge Clank, which was basically a Tetris ripoff. Luckily, in 2020, the Spanish version of Lost Media Wiki actually found and restored the game, where it can now be played from archive.org. Hooray! Ratchet & Clank 1 Yellow Bolt Counter. In early prototypes of the first game, the bolt counter was yellow instead of blue. On the Q-Team room floor. In Up Your Arsenal, there was originally going to be a 6th vid comic called Issue 6 on the Q-Team room floor. There's some code referring to it in an early build of the game, accompanied by a developer comment saying this scene has been cut, implying this was cut fairly early into development. Focus 344. This is an early build of Up Your Arsenal, specifically the first build they made for playtesting. As such, this version features numerous differences from the final game, such as unfinished, cursed cutscenes, no secrets in the levels like titanium bolts and skill points, and a bunch of leftover assets from Going Commando, such as the ammo crates, nanotech crates, and the general physics of the game. Japanese armor upgrades. In the Japanese version of Deadlocked, armor upgrades are accompanied by this masterpiece of animation. Well shit, splines. In the game's code, a spline refers to an object's predetermined path, for example the path the taxis take. Purchase souvenir image. In an early build of Going Commando, unused text can be found in the code referring to a mission called Purchase Souvenir Image. The accompanying text reads, "The booth here sells pictures of your head on a gladiator's body. Maybe you should pick up a souvenir of your trip while you're here," followed by another piece of text simply saying, "Buy souvenir." They really wanted you to buy a souvenir. This text would have appeared on the mission screen after beating the thief on Siberius. I assume this was cut due to pacing reasons, as it doesn't really add anything to the story beyond reminding you of Ratchet & Clank's celebrity status. Together, we can find someone else to blame. In an early build of Going Commando, some objects have a texture with the text, "Together we can find someone else to blame." This appears to be an inside joke by a developer, essentially implying that they can find another developer to blame for the lack of textures on the given object. Ratchet & Clank The Odd Couple. The press kit for the first game includes a bizarre point-and-click game called The Odd Couple. The game features Ratchet & Clank sitting in what appears to be a 1950s sitcom setting, complete with a laugh track, and the player clicks on things to trigger some interesting scenarios. For example, clicking the phone causes Ratchet to call Darth Vader. No, like the real Darth Vader. They licensed the actual character for this. And another bizarre one which I can't even describe with justice, so I'm just gonna play it for you.
Better not let Ratchet see this one.
Why is this an official Ratchet & Clank product? This game was actually lost for a number of years, perhaps deservedly so, until it was restored in 2021 by the same people who restored Race Through Time. Come back and fight like a monkey. This is cut dialogue from Up Your Arsenal, which would have been said by Quark during his Florana boss fight, although, as we find out later, Quark didn't seem to be doing much fighting with the monkeys. Insomniac Museum's Secret Room. In the Insomniac Museum of Up Your Arsenal, you can glitch out of bounds and find this weird room that's not usually accessible. All it has in it is this jump pad and a series of completely empty hallways. It's unknown what this was intended for or why it's in the final game. Planet Caldera. This was the beta name for Planet Kirwan, perhaps better known as Metropolis, or Alero City. Courtney Gear's sexual awakening. Oh boy, so yeah, googling this was just as horrific as expected. The second result was a fanfiction called The Torture of Courtney Gears. The internet is a dark, terrible place. But yeah, Courtney Gears was a pop star in Up Your Arsenal and Deadlock. In one cutscene in Up Your Arsenal, Ratchet implies that she was in a sex tape. Game for 3-year-olds, everyone. Please stop. In Going Commando, there's a section on Planet Tordano where you're with a group of tourists. In earlier versions of the game, killing a bunch of them would cause the tour guide to say, please stop. Gold bolts hurt Ratchet. In a demo version of the first game, the animation for picking up a gold bolt is the same as when Ratchet is hit by something. This was obviously a placeholder until a proper animation was done. Original Tonta sounds. In the first game, there's a weapon called the Tonta that plays various comedic sound effects to lure enemies. In the beta version of the game, rather than these sound effects, it played 4 lines of dialogue in different pitches, including "Get over here," "Hail to the king baby," "Oh, a wise guy," and "You know your shoelace is untied." Leet Ninja. In the code of Going Commando, there's a piece of text that reads Leet Ninja. This isn't used anywhere in the game, begging the question, why? However, there are ninjas in the sequel Up Your Arsenal, so maybe they were originally surmised for this game but couldn't be implemented in time? They have fairly complex movements, so I think it's possible. I have no theory for the unironic usage of Leet though. Every copy of Ratchet & Clank is personalised. This is a reference to the every copy of Super Mario 64 is personalised meme, which is a joke that every copy of Mario 64 has an AI in it that adapts to different players and changes the game. So in other words, that's bullshit. Or is it? To some degree, the Ratchet games actually are personalised because the difficulty of them adapts based on the player's individual performance. For example, if there's a section that you keep dying in over and over, the game adapts that section to make it easier. Enemies do less damage, you do more damage, etc. And with that, there's the Ratchet & Clank Iceberg. Like and subscribe, watch my video ranking every Ratchet & Clank game, tickle my taint, etc. Dun